Rob, so good to spend some time with you. It's been a while, and I've really been looking forward to this. This was kind of one of those dream interviews for me, as I see you all the time. I see you pop up every time I pull up my LinkedIn with your work around Rob's Reads. So for those of you who don't know, Rob reads a lot of books, at least one a week, and posts his reviews, which are candid, they're hilarious, and they're very articulate. So check them out. But Rob, thanks for spending some time with me today. How are you, by the way?
I am doing fantastic, and it's great to see you, man. I was trying to remember the last time you and I saw each other in person, which I think might have been like a Central Region sales kickoff in maybe 2017 or 18. It's been a while. So
I was going to say 18, probably. Yeah, that's a good call out. It has been a while, and that's the magic of this virtual world, is that there are no geographical barriers to getting the gang back together. So great to see you. Love the decorated bookshelf behind you too. I feel like I'm like a guest on Rob's Reads almost. So,
but I want to brought you into the studio. Yes,
that's right. I'm part of the mix. But I want to spend some time today talking about some of your unique philosophies around sales and personal growth, personal development, and even personal brand, because these are things that are top of mind for a lot of folks. And I think you've made some strides and headway in very unique ways that will resonate with a lot of people. So if I'm not mistaken, your career in sales had some interesting beginnings and origins, and I'd love to kind of hear your career journey.
Sure. So I stumbled into being a salesperson, and it started. I'm from a very small town in North Dakota, and my first job was in sales, and I was in high school. I think I was 15, just about to turn 16. I just got in a car. I was trying to figure out how am I going to put gas into this car, because you live out in the middle of nowhere. You're driving 30 miles to get anything, a cheeseburger, 30 miles. So you got to figure out how to put gas in your Honda Civic. And I ended up working at a small telemarketing firm and just selling like B2B telecommunications packages, hardware, just very small scale stuff. But I was trying to explain this to somebody. I was like, getting the job, I feel like somebody vouched for me, and they're like, yeah, just put him on the phone. See, he'll pick up stuff quickly. And a lot of it was just smiling and dialing and getting on the phones and talking to people and trying to figure out how you can solve unarticulated needs. And can you be curious enough to try and figure out what those things are in a very, very short period of time, right? Because if you're cold calling people, your audition is less than 30 seconds,
sure,
right? Because you might be interrupting dinner, or kids are going to bed or something like that, and you have to be able to try and make a connection with people in a very short period of time. And you also have to get really good at being rejected, like a lot.
Especially when you're talking about their phone package. I mean, that's something really near and dear to their heart.
Yeah, and this is like in the early 2000s, and they're like, I understand the irony of me calling to to sell you phone packages on the phone, but here's where I can maybe save you some money or help add some value to your organization. And it was just, you just get a lot of at bats. And I love baseball in general, but you get a lot of at bats having a lot of conversations, and you learn what not to do just as much as you learn what to do. And, over a period of time, being able to pay your bills that way and try to, fund some of the other things that I wanted to do, being a musician and traveling. And then when I'd be at home, I'd be like, oh man, all right, I gotta get back on the phone, start selling again so I can afford to pay rent. Right. And, ultimately that ended up parlaying itself into a career in technology sales, which is it's still kind of mind-boggling to me that that's how that ended up working out. That you grow up with a computer and you get pretty decent at sales, and then you get an opportunity someday to work for one of the best companies in the world, and just from doing the same thing, you're just still trying to solve for problems and finding unarticulated needs, building relationships with people. It's the same thing. It's just at a different scale and a different level, just a couple decades past. It's pretty surreal to me even now.
That's a super cool question that I think we could almost like lob out to the audience. Like, I bet there's a lot of accidental salespeople out there. I talked to a lot of folks that kind of just got into it by happenstance, but at the heart of it is always people, right? I mean, it's exactly what you said. It's all about talking to people. I was a very accidental salesperson as well. It was, a family friend recommended me for a role. They knew a recruiter. I also started in telecommunications, one call close type of an environment. And it's interesting too, because I saw your recent review on Grant Cardone, right? It's compare and contrast that with what we do now. It's fascinating to me. It's most interesting, Rob, because like back at that time, like I thought I had this great enlightenment because I was doing well, I was performing well at sales. I was top producer. I got promoted very quickly, and I thought I was like, wow, I've just really cracked the game of sales. But I think where I had the real epiphany, where I realized that, oh my goodness, I could never possibly crack the game of sales. And this was, when I started at Microsoft, which challenged me like nothing I've ever encountered. And it's been fascinating to me too to become more of it's very much a team sport. You're working as part of a dynamic team, but also like very servant version of sales as opposed to, very like run and gun, getting the at bats, closing something in the conversation you're in. How would you articulate what's kind of been your biggest learning over that span of time?
I think the amount of preparation is disproportionately larger. Where, when you have a product to sell in a short period of time, you get the muscle memory of being able to respond quickly to common objections or to, have facts and figures off the top of your head. But especially as I've gotten more into the enterprise and especially in the business applications world, I feel like I have to do so much more point of view based homework before I can even earn the right for a conversation. Like you have to be able to add value and you have to be able to build those relationships and bring some level of intellectual investment into the conversation so that especially with the organizations that I work with, large consumer brands, there's so many people that are trying to vie for their attention. So why would they talk to me? And what can I uniquely bring to the conversation? And that's part of the reason that I do Rob's Reads is I'm constantly trying to learn more about the broader ecosystem so that when I get into a room, I have something compelling to either point out as an insight or a question that I can ask that maybe isn't being addressed through other conversations as we're walking in. Oftentimes we're in a boardroom. We've got multiple workloads that are being represented in a broader conversation. And so what can I do to, one, bring value to that conversation, but how can I also seek to find those unarticulated needs? And it's like what's the real problem here? It's like the coaching question, right? You just kind of keep asking that question. It's finding unique ways that you can ask that question while being based in industry knowledge or macroeconomic factors. Right now, it's inflation, the supply chains, earnings calls that may be happening from competitors. Like I have to really know what's going on with those things at any given time. And the more that I can feel like I'm prepared for those conversations, the more confident I am as a seller. Which confidence is so important, right? But you also have to have humility to know that, like you said, you're never going to master it. You're always trying to sharpen the sword because some factor is going to change. The market dynamics change, your account list change, whatever it is, and just constantly trying to, keep chasing something that's kind of off in the distance. And you're like, I can never really get to it, but I can get closer. That's how I feel every day. It's I'm always trying to get a little bit better.
I love that. So good. Like there's so much to unpack there. I feel like you kind of hit on this, like the atmosphere is up to the ante. There's so many great resources out there at our disposal, but there's 1,000 sellers reaching out to probably some of the same executives every month. So what are we going to do that's going to differentiate and stand out and stand apart and be different? And what's interesting? So like what you're doing with Rob's Reads, I want to dial in on that for a second, because first off, how did that start? But second, what have been some maybe unanticipated byproducts of it? And I ask this because like I became what I like to call an accidental podcaster. A couple of years ago, I was lamenting that I missed just sitting around having the water cooler talking about sales, talking about leadership, talking about company culture. And then I realized I can do that with anybody at any time, hence why we're here, right? And so like I started having these conversations with different leaders across across the globe. And then I even started talking to customer executives on my podcast, talking about leadership and culture and, employee engagement and things that were top of mind for them. And it begat more opportunities to collaborate and work together, which was an unanticipated byproduct. I learned from the conversation, but it also turned into areas where we might be able to work together as two organizations, which blew my mind. And I'd love to hear kind of what was your impetus for Rob's Reads, but what's maybe been an unanticipated byproduct of it too that was an added surprise?
Yeah, and so I've been a bookworm since I was a child. It's just one of those things I've always been reading. It was something that was prioritized just for my parents. I was always just kind of studious in general and just curious. I'd just be reading all different kinds of books. And it was something where, especially as I was having either career conversations with folks that I was mentoring, and I always have like kind of a list of, all right, you need to start with these 5 books. Oh, you're preparing for negotiations, you got to go read Never Split the Difference. Or, oh, hey, I want to try and figure out, I want to build leadership development skills. So I'd always have these recommendations anecdotally. And then I started being like, man, sometimes people throw me a curveball and they want like a really specific subject. I almost need to build a database of the books that I know. So I started literally keeping a spreadsheet of all of these. And then I started going, well, maybe I should just start like reviewing these and giving my perspectives, because I'll read multiple books on a subject. And then, I like the term, the truth is always somewhere in the middle, because you can read multiple different points of view and there might be something that you can take out of that as you create your own perspective. And then I made the decision, when the pandemic was hitting, that I was going to go to grad school. And I'd been considering this for a while. I wasn't sure if I was going to do law school, business school, or maybe a combination of both. And I knew I was going to be reading a lot. And one of the things I decided I would try to challenge myself to do is, as I would be reading, or as I would be taking a course, I would try to read other books on that subject during the course, because they're like a 7-week sprint. So if I read about economics, can I read multiple points of view around economics? And can I challenge myself to read those books while I'm doing my coursework? And then I would just start doing it, and I would challenge myself. I give myself little quotas, because salesperson, we love quotas to some extent, right? Where we go, okay, I got a number I can go hit.
It's a love-hate relationship, but yeah.
It's a love-hate relationship, because it does keep you accountable, where you go,
you got that right.
I gotta eat the elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah.
Right? And I go, well, the average personal development book, 7 or 8 hours. If I can do an hour a day, I can do a book a week. And if I can do a book a week, I can do 52 a year. Average CEO reads 50 or 60 books a year. I'm trying to talk to CEOs. If they're looking for book recommendations, maybe they would come to me. That's the whole premise of it. And one of the cool things that's happened is I've had C-level executives reaching out and asking for book recommendations. And I actually reviewed a book from the chief economist of Walmart, and he would repost my content and say, hey, thanks for the review, Rob. And so it's cool to be able to engage with those folks. And I also have friends like you who've also written books. So I've reviewed my friends' books, and it's, giving me the encouragement that when I'm done with grad school, I'll go and write a book myself. And, maybe I'll have other folks, asking me questions. Hey, how did I come up with the idea for my book? And it's just something that kind of keeps you motivated and hopefully adds value to the people, the customers that I'm working with, the partners that I work with, folks in my network that are maybe just looking for interesting things to, plug into their own, learning and development, which is a huge priority for us at Microsoft. The growth mindset it's kind of a buzzword in the industry, but it's also a lifestyle for those of us in technology. Like, we gotta keep sharpening the sword like every day. Otherwise, you feel like you're fall behind, and it's just like, man, I just got to keep on moving, keep moving.
So well said, Rob. And I think my challenge to the audience would be, okay, we've both just articulated a couple of ways where we've taken things that we were passionate about. We found mediums that we were comfortable with, in this case, video, but maybe yours isn't video. Maybe it's blogging, maybe it's creating groups or whatever it is. But finding ways that we managed to crack the C-suite, which a lot of sellers try to do and miss. And we managed to do that in very unorthodox ways. And so that's why I throw that out there to challenge folks around their branding. personal branding is all about what you want to be known for, but it's also a lot about your strengths, your superpowers, your passions. How can you fuel that into mediums that you're comfortable with? Now, before Rob and I hopped on, he coined this thing that I want to throw out there. I loved this so much. It resonated with me such a great deal. He says, we're all going through the process of learning, but we're doing it more publicly. And I think what I liked about that was that, like, for instance, for both of us, we kind of started this from a place that was unassuming, and really we didn't necessarily have any expectation around it, except Rob wanted to read more and I wanted to talk to people about sales and leadership. But then it turned into ways that really personified our brand and opened up conversations that we never could have fathomed. And I loved what you said too earlier, Rob, about how we're always just kind of chasing what else is out there. We're cognizant that there's always more to get, give, and do. And that really resonated with me. And you've hit on some personal development strategies, but I'd love to hear more. What are some other areas where you're focused from a personal development standpoint? What's been helpful?
Yeah, I think one of the more, I would say, public ones for me is my interest in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And it's one of those things where, again, as I'm learning and going through this process, I like documenting that and sharing the what and the why, because, again, most people, they don't do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But if they see someone who is a busy professional who's chasing after something that I think is objectively quite difficult and still doing it because it's very humbling. And I constantly am like trying to think, okay, I know that this is going to make me a better person, either more patient or more comfortable in uncomfortable situations, right? If you're in a difficult negotiation or you're on the hot seat during a forecast call, it's a lot easier to be able to navigate some of those things when you've, been dealing with a 20-year-old wrestler who's 240 pounds the night before.
Can't imagine.
That does happen for me, right? So, and I like trying to share some of those things to give people an insight of the daily discipline to continue to get on the mats. And that for me, it's like, I got my quota for how much mat time I get. And when I'm there, I'm very serious about it. I'm there either learning for myself, I'm instructing my students, I'm trying to give back to the community that's given me so much. But at the same time, it's a perishable skill. If you don't spend the time on the mats, it goes away into the ether. And I don't want to waste all the effort of the time that I've spent. So you got to keep moving. It's the same thing with education. You have to keep sharpening the blade, and every day, just a little bit. It's the 1% better every day. It's not these big jumps and, hey, we're going to go up here. It's the consistent, steady movement and holding yourself accountable to make sure that you're building your structures, your processes, and you're focusing your time on the things that you want to invest in long term, whether it's your career, your personal development, your health and wellness. All of those things, the more consistently you can do them, the better that you're going to progress, especially over the longer time scales.
Well, you said the word, it's discipline. I mean, that's really what it all comes down to, is that development of, a discipline around how you set your priorities, how you execute, and how you continue to engage others and be true to what you're passionate about, what you've set out to do. So I love that you called that out. I was going to say we have a lot of similarities. Everything you said up to that point, I was tracking with you, but I don't have the jiu-jitsu discipline there. What would you say are your most recommended books? I know you do a lot of recommendations, and I'd hate to silo it into one bucket over another, but you talk to a lot of people. What books do you recommend the most often? I'm always looking for new books to read. So it was nice because I was on a call today with our CVP, and he gave out some book recommendations, and I took those down. So I'm always looking for ways to learn. So part of this question is selfish, but what would you say your most recommended books?
Yeah, I think I just recently did a video on this. So the top three that I say all the time,
yeah.
If we can do Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, he's a fascinating character. He's a former Navy SEAL commander, literally created an operating system that is so helpful for personal leadership, organizational leadership. It's immediately applicable, and it's so simple that you can apply it to so many different things in your life. Fascinating book, and I reread it probably once a year. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, former FBI hostage negotiator. His approach to conflict mediation, utilizing empathy to really get at the heart of those unarticulated needs and problems, and not just compromising for the sake of compromise, but really trying to find mutual solutions where you don't see the other party as an opponent, but a partner. And that's a very, very critical distinction for negotiations. The other one, I tell, especially from a career development perspective, the first 90 days. That is a fantastic book. And I actually, that was a CVP that I once met my first day as a manager. It was my literal first day as a manager at Microsoft. And I was like, I'm taking over a new team here, all the challenges, what should I do? And she goes, you need to read this book, and you need to fill it out, because it'll help you understand the whole scenario, zoom out, and then figure out what are the core things you need to communicate, what do you need to ask for, and how are you going to help get your team on board with you. And I've recommended that one multiple times for folks, that it's extremely tactical, where it's like a worksheet. Just follow it, figure it out, and then also utilize it as you're explaining kind of what's going on with your mentors, your leaders, building kind of your coalition of the willing to try and move something forward. Between those three, man, you've got so much knowledge just in, a few hundred pages out of those 3 books.
Coalition of the willing. I got to say, Rob, I can't wait to read your book, because I have no doubt it will be very compelling and gripping. And thank you. I feel like I got a scoop here today. The Rob's Reads top 3. So I really feel blessed to have had this conversation with you today. I know we're coming up on time. Anything else you want to hit on before we sign off today? This has been great.
No, just a sincere thank you for all that you've done for the Microsoft field and for our customers and partners. You're constantly putting out more information for us, and we are certainly lucky to have you in our midst. So thank you, and thank you for the time.
You're too kind. That's how I feel about you. I feel it's the least I can do. I've been really fortunate here. We're surrounded by wonderful people, customers, partners. The whole ecosystem is just so enriching, and you're a part of that too. So this is one of my favorite connections that I've made in my time at Microsoft, and I appreciate your time today, Rob. So good luck out there in the field, and we'll see you next time.
Sounds good. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, Rob.